In 1972, New York City introduced a new map for its subway system designed by world-renowned graphic designer Massimo Vignelli. This is widely considered one of the best design maps of the 20th century. It's simple, clean, and aesthetically pleasing. The map is so respected that the New York Museum of Modern Art has included the design in its permanent collection.
It is considered one of the graphic marvels of the last century, and New Yorkers hated it, so.
That's Cheddar, the director of the New York Transit Museum.
The Vignelli map, it's a great sort of chapter in an incredible book that is New York Mass Transit.
But it's a chapter that only lasted 7 years. By 1979, the map was replaced with a version of the subway map New York still uses today. So why didn't the map work for New York City? And what can its failure teach us about design?
So the MTA was formed in 1968. And one of their biggest charges was, we need to get unification in trying to move people through the system. And that was everything from unifying what the signage should look like, and then certainly the big task was, is there a way to build a better map?
It was Massimo Vignelli who designed the unified signage style that is still in use today. So the MTA told him to take a crack at a new map design as well. And what he came up with was pretty striking. The geography was completely distorted. Land masses were smooth and rounded. Subway lines were untangled and straightened to turn and cross only at 45 and 90-degree angles. Vignelli's goal was to simplify the sprawling subway system. As a result, he gave the city above ground a minimalist makeover. Central Park was shortened from a rectangle into a square, and Vignelli removed all the streets and neighborhoods. And he shifted subway stops entirely. The 50th and Broadway stop is located directly south of Central Park. But in Vignelli's map, it's placed much farther west. And Staten Island? Just gone, completely. The water wasn't even blue, for crying out loud. But these design choices really aren't that radical. We can see similar simplification and distortion across all types of metro maps. And these designs stuck, because they have a proven track record of success. In 1933, London introduced a new map for its underground transit system. It was designed by Henry Beck, a technical draftsman. He described it not as a map, but as a diagram. Because of this classification, Beck didn't have to make the design geographically accurate or even to scale.
So he kind of dropped the hammer, and he basically said, this map is going to be divorced of any sort of above ground caricature or sort of illustrations that have to do with what's going on above the system.
His reason was simple. People underground don't need to understand the geography above them. They just needed to know two things: where they are and where they're going. Nothing above ground was labeled. All lines were straight, all stops were equidistant, and the most traveled lines near London's center were enlarged. Beck's insights were revolutionary for the time, and his map was a smash hit. 700,000 copies of the diagram were initially printed, and sold out within a month. You can see the influence of Beck's design across many types of subway maps. Beck's simple vision has become standard in cities across the world. And research seems to back up the benefits of this design. A computer model developed at MIT scans an image and produces a readout of how that image is captured by peripheral vision. The readouts, called mongrels, show how much of an image is comprehensible when the eye focuses on a specific point. The MIT team tested the Boston Metro map, a map that draws from Becks Influence. In the test, the point of focus was the MIT transit stop, and the mongrel looked like this. A little blurry, but you can generally see all the lines and where they go.
Graphically and from a design aesthetic, it's a thing of beauty, the Beck map, and they've been consistent for, approaching 100 years. That is not the story of New York.
The story of New York's subway system is a little complicated. Up until 1940, there were 3 subway systems, all operating independently and in direct competition with each other. Each subway company produced their own map, and each map only included that company's subway lines. If you were a New Yorker wanting to travel on different companies' lines, you needed different maps. And the only thing that was consistent between the maps was the geography of New York. Subway maps continued to reflect the city's geography after the subway was unified and came under the city's control.
And that has really been the way that New Yorkers evolved in their understanding of what to expect of a subway map.
That is, of course, until Vignelli's diagrammatic map. Warping the geography was a bridge too far for New Yorkers. No one knew what stops were close to their above-ground destinations. There were stories of tourists getting off the subway at the bottom of Central Park and expecting a 30-minute stroll to the top. In reality, this trip was 3 times as long. One theory about why this was so upsetting to New Yorkers was that there was a significant crime problem in the 1970s. People wanted to limit their time underground as much as possible. Vignelli's map so distorted the locations of stops that riders didn't know where they needed to get off. The anxiety of being lost underground, where you were more likely to get mugged or roughed up, wasn't something New Yorkers wanted or needed. Vignelli's diagrammatic map is easy to look at. The mongrel of the map supports this. But is it good or bad design?
What's the best map? The best map is a map that people will use. That's the best map.
Good design isn't just about being nice to look at. It also solves a problem. With the Beck diagram, the far-flung stops of London were brought closer, making them feel not so far-flung and the city center look more accessible. But New Yorkers didn't have the same problem. They already felt they had a handle on navigating the city. Vignelli saw too much clutter and information, but New Yorkers just saw New York.
It's not just the physical address. It really is, for New Yorkers, for generation, the neighborhood that's going on upstairs.
Which would you prefer, a diagrammatic map like Vignelli's in Becks, or a more geographically accurate subway map? Let us know in the comments below, and like and subscribe for more Cheddar deep dives and breakdowns.